So there was a report from Bloomberg going through the financials and the positioning of Obsidian. It's written by Jason Schreier, but basically it's titled Inside Xbox. The game studio is trying to reinvent itself. And we get some interesting looks at what went on behind the scenes. There's a bunch of little interesting tidbits in here. Like he outlines, the CEO, Urquhart, said that their releasing of 3 games in 1 year was not like a good thing. It was a result of scheduling problems, and it was a result of all of this other stuff that went poorly within their timelines and stuff. And so one thing he also said, so they've had a lot to discuss in recent gatherings. Last year, the developer released 3 games, a rare and impressive achievement for a studio of its size, but 2 of them failed to meet sales forecasts set by Obsidian's parent company, Microsoft. Urquhart said, they're not disasters. I'm not going to say this is a kick in the teeth. It was more like, that sucks. What are we learning from this? Effectively, what they reveal is that Outer Worlds 2 did not meet sales expectations or revenue expectations, and Avowed did not either. They did say Grounded 2 was a surprise success to them, and that was doing quite well, but those 2 games were disappointments for them. Partially because they probably stacked them in too close. I think Outer Worlds 2 is an interesting story because Outer Worlds 2, remember, that was Microsoft's attempt. They wanted that to be the first $80 game from their portfolio. You remember, it's easy to forget because so much happens in this industry, but like Microsoft at one point in the summer put Outer Worlds 2 as their big showcase game. That the year before, I think it was Call of Duty. Okay. Core Xbox Showcase, Outer Worlds 2 right after for 45 minutes. And they revealed that it was going to be $80, which was insane. And even the developers and people at Obsidian seem to be like, are we really doing this? Is this what we're doing? Like, it's just, why us? Why us? Why can't you do it with Call of Duty and like leave that there? Why do we have to be the guinea pig for this experiment? Like, what are we doing? They eventually walked it back because everybody was like, no. It's just like, are you crazy? No. Like, I think Outer Worlds 2 was a good game. Avowed, I think it's a good game. Are they like masterpieces that'll change your life? No, but 99% of games aren't. I think they were good games that you can have fun with and were pretty solid. However, I don't think you can be good and justify $80. You know, you gotta be pretty freaking phenomenal to justify an $80 price tag, okay? Like, that's crazy talk. It's a little crazy talk. Even if like GTA 6 is 80, I think a lot of people will be like, even though GTA 6 is GTA 6, you know? So for it to be Outer Worlds 2, which looked good, maybe not like, you know, generation defining, but like good, I think it's just tough to justify an $80 price hike. So they ended up walking that back and they lowered the price down to 70, which even at 70, a lot of people were like, because like Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed, I think are really good. They feel like solid, for modern standards, AA open world RPGs. Like they are not on the scale of like some of the big AAA stuff that you see nowadays. And so I think trying to charge full AAA pricing for it just feels rough, especially when Microsoft is doing Game Pass stuff on the side. But anyway, that's one side of it. As for Avowed, where's the specifics about that? Yeah, both Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 were in development for more than 6 years, inflating their production costs and the company's financial expectations. They were in development for 6 years, dude. Woof. That's crazy. That's crazy. Apparently nearly 7 years. So look at this. So a few years later, Urquhart and one of his co-founders were in talks to sell the business, Obsidian, to the company that had almost killed it. During the negotiations with Microsoft, Obsidian's executives assembled a slideshow presentation for the concept that would become Avowed, pitched as an ambitious cross between mega hits Elder Scrolls V Skyrim and Destiny that would allow players to battle monsters together in a massive fantasy world. It was an impressive, if unlikely, proposition. He said, quote, "My thought when I first saw it was, I don't think there's a team on the planet that could execute on this," says Josh Sawyer, Obsidian studio design director. 2 years later, Obsidian stripped out the multiplayer feature, and a year after that, it assigned a new director for the project. By the time Avowed came out, it had been in the works for nearly 7 years. That's woof right there. Ass woof. In 2019, just after the Xbox purchase, Obsidian released The Outer Worlds, a sci-fi game by the creators of Fallout that attempted to recapture the spirit of their old game's jagged satire. It was a surprise hit, selling 5 million copies. And Obsidian went on to work on a sequel. Hampered by the pandemic and technological challenges, the second game took longer than expected. Quote, "I don't think anybody really likes 5, 6, 7-year dev cycles," said Brandon Adler, the director of Outer Worlds 2. "We've kind of grown into that." Grounded 2 came together the quickest, despite the popularity of the original, which the studio released during the pandemic gaming boom of 2020. Obsidian hadn't planned on greenlighting a sequel until it got a pitch in early 2023 from Eidos Interactive, a studio in Montreal that was looking for outsourcing work. That the 3 games were already in 2025 was mostly a coincidence. Releasing them all in one calendar year made for a slick marketing beat, the year of Obsidian, as Xbox called it, but it also taxed the studio's resources. The group has around 280 employees, far fewer than its peers, such as Baldur's Gate 3's maker Larian, which has more than 500, or Cyberpunk 2077's maker CD Projekt Red, which has more than 1,300 employees. Obsidian support teams were stretched thin, with frazzled staff leaping frantically from one game to the next. Quote, "Spacing those releases helps the company manage its resources and not burn everybody out. It's not good to release 3 games in the same year. It's the result of doing things wrong." Which, I mean, having 3 games ready at the same time is crazy. This guy's desk is giving me anxiety. It's freaking me out, dude. It's freaking me out. It's crazy. What is that? Contact information. This is like a jersey or something. It's a bug kebab for a bearded dragon, it looks like. I don't understand, dude. That's so funny. What a desk. So all of this to say, the game was originally pitched as a Destiny meets Skyrim crossover, which is interesting. Like, I do think that there is a hole for more fantasy. I don't even know what you would call it, but just massive fantasy live service games that are not just massive MMOs, right? I think that if you were to take the Destiny formula, blend it with a little Monster Hunter, and then maybe a little bit of little Dragon's Dogma maybe on top, you know, I think that could be interesting. The problem is just, to build a game like that, you need 500 to 600 people working for 5 years nonstop. And if it doesn't click, like it's hemorrhaging money. Like, it's just such a high risk, high reward, but very high risk proposition. And for them, it just didn't make sense. And so they pulled off of it and chose not to do it. Polygon, though, wrote an article arguing that the crossover that they originally were planning, it may have saved its sales. I think what happened, okay, is that they realized a couple of years in that the multiplayer thing was going to be extremely expensive to continue building out. And they pivoted, decided to make it more of a single player RPG. And I think that worked better. I think the game was better as a result, because we saw what Avowed was like. And I don't think if Avowed was a co-op game, it would have done better, personally. Maybe that's a hot take, I don't know. But I think they made the right choice for Avowed to pivot towards single player and go that route. I think that was the right choice. I think that the idea that they had originally pitched could be cool, but I just think that the types of studio and the types of the type of game that would have turned into is not the type of game that Obsidian is prepared to make and maintain, because it's like insane. But one of the other interesting little tidbits we got through all of this is, for one, they want to be able to make faster decisions, shorter development times, ask for more outsourcing. The company is already embracing another shortcut. According to Urquhart, the team plans to more frequently reuse technology on projects instead of, say, building a new animation system for each game. For 2010's Fallout New Vegas, Obsidian used art and tech from its predecessor, Fallout 3. New Vegas ended up costing around $8 million, a relative bargain, and it took less than 2 years to make. Quote, "We don't need to change everything every time," Urquhart says. "We've had to debate this internally. Do people really care that we spent an extra 100-person months on the inventory screen?" 100-person months. That's interesting. Probably not. Probably not. And I think that this has been the magic sauce for Capcom, and it's been the magic sauce for From Software especially, is that, like, don't come at me. That's just my opinion. Cancel me. I don't care. Each of the From Software games, with the exception of Sekiro, they're not massive graphical leaps or anything. Like, they're not massive leaps in terms of, you know, texture quality or graphical fidelity. They're not adding in like 4D ray tracing with 3D stereophonic audio, whatever the crap. Like, they're using the same tool sets for, like, Night Rain. They use the same tool sets, a lot of the same exact assets from Elden Ring, And that allowed them to make that really quickly, pump it out. And because people primarily cared about the gameplay, they had a good time. And I think that for the types of game that Obsidian is making, I think that's fine. I don't think you need to go crazy with like bells and whistles if the core game concept isn't that compelling. For a company like Obsidian, where they need to invest in my opinion, is primarily in like the writing, and probably the art direction is a big part of it too. The art direction was probably my biggest frustration with Avowed. I thought that, it didn't look bad, but dude, that initial trailer, the announcement trailer, this was 5 years ago, but this does not look anything like the game we ended up getting. This is dark and gritty. It's very gray and scary. Like, this looks very interesting to me. I like the look of this. I'm into this. What we ended up getting was, like, in my view, too colorful. Like, I don't know what it is about game companies that think that every player wants something shiny and pretty and colorful. No, I don't think so. I think sometimes players want something gritty and dark and mysterious and scary. Like, what's that? Where, like, can I go there? This was intriguing. People were really excited at the idea of this. And then what we ended up getting was like, oh, my character has mushrooms on his face and he has flower power. Like, it just didn't do it for me in the same way. So for me, the art direction could have used a tweak, but I enjoyed Avowed. I think it was a good game, but it's just hard to make a profit on something that took nearly 7 years to make and changed 4 or 5 separate times, in various different ways. But one major way, pivoting from multiplayer to single player, it's just tough to make that profitable. One of the other interesting things that was outlined in this article, though, is the CEO was asked about the 30% profit margin that has been rumored from Microsoft. There's a little bit of confusion about this. Okay. So for one, there was I believe it was report. I don't think it was just a leak or speculation, but it was a report saying that Xbox was requiring a 30% profit margin to be hit for their studios. And that's why you started to see all of their studios pushing for PS5 launches, because that helps boost the revenue you're bringing in to increase the margin. And it's why you started to see companies like BGS pushing in-game paid mods and stuff, because they needed to hit 30% profit margin to make Microsoft, Papa Phil happy. After that, there was reporting from another outlet that claimed that was false. They sourced an anonymous source that they would not tell you who it was, what their role in the company was, why they knew what they were saying. It was literally, trust me, bro. And they said, it's not 30. It's not 30%. If they mean like it's 29.99%, okay, but even that like assumes that the source is reliable to begin with. Everybody else seems to be pretty confident that 30% is the margin rate that they've demanded. And in this article and in this interview, Urquhart talks about it openly. So it kind of like, oh, well, there you go. Some of that stuff will involve dealing with more of the corporate overlords. For the past decade, after struggling to put out games on par with those of Sony Corp and Nintendo, Microsoft went on a buying spree, culminating in the $69 billion purchase of Activision Blizzard in 2023. But with revenue growth flat, console sales declining, and Microsoft's priorities shifting to artificial intelligence, the company has put Xbox under new financial scrutiny, enacting an ambitious 30% profit margin target for any studio, or for many studios. So maybe some don't have that expectation, but there you go. Yeah, it's not 30, it's 40. Bloomberg News has previously reported on that. The pressure has led to the Xbox team to publish many of its games on Sony's PlayStation, an unthinkable prospect just a few years ago, after and cut costs in other ways with downsizing, use of AI tools and stuff like that. I don't know if you guys remember it, but for example, at Halo Studios, they have actually hired somebody who was previously like a czar of AI integration. It looks like the next Halo is going to be like majorly using AI for a ton of their stuff. For Obsidian, the targets don't seem unfeasible as long as it continue experimenting. Pentiment, the studio's 2022 adventure game, was cheap to make, critically acclaimed, and niche, but still profitable. The hope, Urquhart says, is that Xbox continues to fund riskier projects and values achievements besides just strong sales, even if it means accepting that, quote, maybe we are going to be from a profitability standpoint, maybe where we are going to be from a profitability standpoint isn't going to be 30%. I think what is interesting is that so far Obsidian has been allowed to experiment. I think that Xbox is willing to give like willing to throw a bone occasionally, but they still need the moneymakers. They still need the moneymakers. What seems to be clear though is, I think it was 5 years. No. Basically, the idea Urquhart expressed was that it makes sense if a company wants a higher return on like a 5-year investment, which you spend God knows how many millions upon millions upon millions of dollars on something. You expect a return out of it. And it's okay to expect a return that's decent for a 5-year time horizon. Like that's a long period of time. And I think that that's reasonable. I think what's tricky though is that certain games, like they just are not built to be profitable in that way. It just doesn't work. Like if you have a single player RPG that is the game you're making and you're shooting for a 30% profit margin, you either need to pump that out real quick, you need to have a higher price tag at like $80, or you're going to do like season passes and you're going to do microtransactions and all that stuff, which is doable, but it tends to also have a lot of baggage, negative feedback from fans. People don't tend to like that. So you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place on whether you trim the budget ahead of time, whether you try to charge and get more money on the back end. It's just tricky. And the kind of omnipresent consideration is, how does Game Pass factor into all of this? Like if they're demanding 60, or if they're demanding 30% profit margin, how does that affect with Game Pass? Are they saying, hey, you have to hit this many hours of playtime to equate to this revenue target? I don't know. It's messy, but I'm sure they have standards. But yeah, the big takeaway from the article is just that Avowed seems to have missed their targets. Outer Worlds 2 missed their targets. And they also reiterated that Outer Worlds 2, not Avowed. Avowed, they're open to doing a sequel. I think they've already started early work on a sequel. But Outer Worlds 2, they said they have no plans for a sequel, full stop, which is interesting. It's very interesting. Something about what they looked at, they thought that there was potential for a sequel for Avowed. They did not think that doing another Outer Worlds made sense. Maybe it's because they're just going to get handed Fallout for a spin-off game or something. Maybe that's why, and it was too close to home. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it was just that Outer Worlds 2 was a much bigger miss than Avowed was. I don't know. It seems pretty clear to me that they expected Outer Worlds 2 to be big. They gave it the same stage they gave Call of Duty and Starfield. And at least from my perspective, like I'm pretty tuned into the gaming community and how much we talk about games and cover it. I feel like people talked about Outer Worlds 2 for like 3 days. I don't know, man. I don't think it generated anywhere near the interest that they needed it to. So unfortunate, yes, because I think, again, Outer Worlds 2, I think is a solid game, but I'm not really, can't say I'm surprised at the outcome. Unfortunately, I thought it was pretty decent. I did too. I just think that at some point, decent doesn't get you across the finish line. You know, like you got to be exceptional, and I think that's what a lot of people, a lot of these studios are realizing, is that good enough is not good enough anymore. You know, that was Ubisoft's problem, is that they would develop these games, build them out, polish them up, and they would get them just good enough that they could like justify releasing it. I don't think that works anymore. I just don't think it works anymore. Outer Worlds had no fans. I think this is a broader thing, okay? New mini sort of segment kind of thing. A lot of people have talked about this, but I think it's important to reiterate. Xbox has a lot of games. They have a lot of studios, and they have a lot of games that are in all sorts of different tiers of like where they should fit in the market. AA games, AAA games, even some games that are way more experimental and are more indie style games, like, you know, Pentiment, which we were just talking about. Pentiment is a phenomenal game, and it's weird, but it's from Obsidian, and it's a Game Pass game. It's not a game that would historically you would expect to do well, but apparently it was profitable and did really well, and it only exists because it was experimental and they were able to do it. But Xbox has one massive problem, in my view. Just it's a kind of omnipresent problem for them that has gotten worse. And for me, it's the Xbox beat problem is what I'll call it. It used to be, just a few short years ago, when I think Xbox had less games on their hands, they were able to make each moment a beat. So Starfield, for example, Starfield was a big moment. It was a big moment where they put all eyes on it. You remember they did the Starfield Direct, this thing. You remember this, where they got Todd on stage? I guess on camera, and they did the full deep dive and they went through all of this. They did a ton of marketing for it. It was a moment. This was, of course, 2 years ago. This is June 11th, 2023. And for the next 3 months, it was Starfield everywhere. People were talking about it. People were excited for it. They're looking at it. There's all sorts of analysis videos, people trying to break it down, trying to figure out what's happening. And that beat, that moment is important for marketing. Very important, because it means eyeballs are on there. People are talking about it, talking to their friends about it. They have it wish listed. They're setting aside time. Maybe they're taking a day off work to play it. That's an important thing, to get that beat, to make that a beat. And I feel like, especially in the aftermath of Starfield, there really has not been a beat anywhere close to the same degree. They've had other big games, but there's not been a beat anywhere close to that. They had a Doom game release since Starfield, and I feel like people talked about Doom for a week. Doom the Dark Ages. It feels like Doom the Dark Ages came and went faster than Summer Games Fest is. Like, it was bizarre. And there was interest. I mean, look, dude, the trailer has 10 million views. Maybe this is just my bubble. I don't know. You guys can tell me in chat. Honestly, tell me in chat. If you feel like people talked about this way more than I'm aware of, please tell me. But I feel like this came and went so freaking fast, where people were like, yeah, try to play it a little bit. I think maybe it's because it was shorter. I also think it was good. I don't think it was like a masterpiece or anything, but it was good. But I swear to God, like it came and went so quickly. People just moved on. And then there's other big games that they've had. They had, this one was a bigger beat. I'll give them credit for this. Indiana Jones was a much bigger moment. And I think it was like, I think it benefited heavily from the fact that it was, for one, a very recognizable brand, a big name brand, which helps. So they've got the Disney marketing machine behind it. I think they also released in December, and December has basically nothing. So no real competition. It launched, I don't remember exactly when it launched, but it was around the Game Awards. It was after the period, or maybe it was late November. It was after the Game Awards cutoff. So it was like late November, early December, something like that. So it had a lot more time to be the focus. And I think that helped. But even after that, like, people moved on once we hit January, February, and the story shifted to other things, and it was just kind of quickly forgotten. And I think that there's two sides of it. For one, I think that Xbox just has a lot of freaking games. They've got a ton of studios. They are trying to juggle all of them. And it's just, frankly, number two, it's not realistic to market them all super heavily and make each one of them a big beat, make them a big moment. Because they had other games, even besides Indiana Jones, that they had coming to Game Pass. For example, Expedition 33. That was a massive get for them to have that on the platform. That's awesome. Game of the Year included in your subscription service on launch date. That's amazing. They had that. They had the Oblivion remake. But even the Oblivion remake was built around a shadow drop. And I also, again, tell me if I'm wrong, genuinely asking, I feel like the Oblivion remake, remaster, or whatever, people played it for sure, but the discourse around it settled very, very quickly. I think partially because we were moving straight into Summer Games Fest and all of that, but it also feels like it wasn't a big, like, it was a big exclamation point moment, but it trailed off very, very quickly. I think that this is like the big difficulty for Xbox right now. Even something like Ghost of Yotei had a lot of marketing behind it to build it up into a moment, for better or worse. even other games like freaking AC Shadows. That was a moment. Maybe not the moment they wanted it to be, but it was a moment. You know, a lot of people were talking about it. A lot of eyeballs on it, you know? And I feel like, you know, Xbox has so many games. They have so many things under their belt, but they've struggled to make a lot of their games into big beats. And I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem for them. Because in my opinion, if you want to sell a game and if you want people to get excited for the game, like, you do need a certain level of quote unquote hype. You need a certain amount of anticipation and excitement. And I think that they're in a spot where they know that a ton of their players are on Game Pass, and they're going to see the pop-up when they boot up their console or boot up their PC. This game is on Game Pass included day one. Try it now. Download it right now. It's in your subscription. And so they're like, why would we need to spend a lot of money marketing it? And this has started right about at exactly the same time. We heard what? We heard reporting from Bloomberg that Microsoft was demanding a 30% profit margin across their whole division. And if they require a 30% profit margin, that means you got to cut expenses, increase the revenue you're bringing in so that that gap is wider. So you have more profit. Where can they cut the expenses? Well, marketing. Trim that down, trim that down. I think that's what they've done. And so I think it's a tactical choice. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think if they wanted to make, maybe select tactically, kind of like PlayStation has done, where they have a big spring game and they have a big fall game. If they wanted to make that the approach and really focus on making those the big beats and really, really push and promote those games and make it a big moment, I think that would work really well, not just for the health of the brand. It would instill confidence in the consumer. I think it'd be good. But so far, their approach for the last 18 months has been just when a game is ready, we'll just release it. Avowed's ready. Okay, we'll send it out. Oh, we've got Doom coming. Okay, well, let's send it out. They do occasionally do like preview events. I think they did one for Doom, but I think they did one for Doom. I did not go. But I think they did one for Doom. But like it's just nowhere near on the same level as some of these other games. It's just not. You look at like Crimson Desert, what they're doing with their marketing, dude, that's a beat. That's going to be a beat. Do you have any idea how many eyeballs are going to be on Crimson Desert reviews when the embargo lifts? Whether you think the game looks great or ass, you're going to be reading reviews when those drop because you're interested. You're intrigued. But I feel like a lot of these Xbox games, they've struggled to make people intrigued in that same way. I think they are primed though for this year. And this is going to be the real test, the real bellwether. I think they should double down on Fable. Double down, triple down. Okay. Fable, I'm getting the feeling it has mass market appeal. Okay. I think they got something on their hands there. They should really make that a moment. Do the Xbox showcase thing. Do the Fable showcase or Fable deep dive, whatever they want to call it. Give that a real moment in the sun. Give it plenty of time. Let people get excited for it. Build up that excitement. Make that a moment. Make that a beat. And then treat it the same when when Gears is ready. Give that its time in the sun. Like, give the games time to become a moment and for people to get really excited for it and to be intrigued by it. I think that's just what they need to do. They got to figure out the beats. Because it's only going to get more and more difficult to stand out as output is increasing. Indie games are more and more common. You got to compete. And how do big AAA companies compete? You can just go with bigger budgets on your games, sure, but you still need to get in front of people. And I think that comes from the marketing side of it. I think that comes from pushing and really, really trying to get the excitement there. So we'll see. PlayStation have better games in 2026. I mean, they've got Saros and then they've got Wolverine. They might... Personally, I'm expecting they probably also have that Horizon MMO, whatever, Monster Hunter game. That's going to be interesting to see. So they should have that. Fair Game $. So they got that. They got that for you. So maybe you're right. He took my